In the early days, you could do bus ministry in the 90s. We started bus routes all over town. We did block parties, outreaches in parks. Back in those days, you could knock on doors. We would just knock on all of the doors around the park, and we would have everybody meet us in the park. But as time goes on, people are less open to that approach. Over the years, we did so many different types of outreaches, trying to figure out how can we reach people again. Then all of a sudden, when we began working with you guys, we've seen more response in our marketing and ChurchCandy than I think we ever saw in 10 years of boots on the ground outreach.
On this episode of the ChurchCandy Podcast, I am sitting down with Pastor Bob Moya of City Chapel Church here in Arlington, Texas. Man, how's it going today?
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me, man.
Man, I'm so excited for you taking the time to sit down with us. I know your church has been working with ChurchCandy for a while, seeing a lot of really, really cool things. I want to take a moment and I want you to share your testimony on kind of first how you first found the Lord, because I know that's a really cool story.
Yeah, well, I wasn't raised in church. I was raised in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas.
Yeah, Oak Cliff, CFNI, that's
Absolutely.
my backyard for a little bit.
Yeah, and so, I came from just a good old-fashioned pagan family, lost and involved in all the things of the world and all of those types of things. And when I was 13 years old, a pastor was out on visitation in my neighborhood and found me and a friend of mine on the street corner and just preached the gospel to us. And when I heard the gospel for the first time, I knew that I wanted to be saved. And so I just gave my heart to Christ right there in the street. And a couple of days later, he came back to bring me a Bible. And when he came back to bring me a Bible, he led my mother and father to Christ in our living room. And our whole world changed.
Yeah.
We went from all of the vices of the world my father was involved in, my mother, and to all of that just drying up and beginning our walk with the Lord.
Yeah.
It was about 2.5 years before we began to go to church because we just didn't have it. We just didn't know where, anything about the churches in the area. So even though we were in Dallas in the Bible Belt, we had never attended church. And so finally, my mother remembered a church that was in the Oak Cliff area that she wanted to visit. So we finally went and got involved in church. But for 2.5 years, we just struggled to walk with God on our own, read our Bibles in our home, and
You didn't have that community around you.
no community around us, no church around us. So it was an incredible deal when we went to our first church in Dallas. But our lives were radically changed, through the gospel. And that has really been what, that background shaped my ministry, shaped my pastorate.
Yeah.
When I got into the ministry and became a pastor many years later, I realized that, the church is, the church is God's tool to bring the gospel into the community and reach people that were like my family. So that's been our heart from day one. So we've always endeavored to be a great outreach church. And that's the story. It's an incredible testimony of God's power to really transform a whole family through the gospel.
Yeah. So I know your church, from day one, you had a heart for the community because that's kind of how you were first introduced to the Lord.
Yes.
So what were some of those outreaches, boots on the ground things that you guys would do?
Yeah, so in the early days, I became fascinated with Pastor Tommy Barnett in Phoenix and the Phoenix First Assembly model of just bus ministry and all of those types of things. So in the early days when I started, you could do bus ministry in the 90s. And so we started bus routes all over town, and we're picking up families and children wherever we could build a bus route. And that was, in the early days, that's how we built our outreach, was primarily around bus ministry. And we did block parties, where outreaches in parks where it's really boots on the ground, hands-on, meeting people. And back in those days, you could knock on doors. We'd go into a neighborhood that had a park, and we would just knock on all of the doors around the park, and we would have everybody meet us in the park. But as time goes on, people are less open to that approach, and especially when COVID, once COVID came along, people are really, less willing to come out, less willing to talk, or even, people don't even really want you to knock on the doors as much. So as that approach began to wane, we went to other types of outreaches. We have an outreach today called Feed the City.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll feed 200 families in our neighborhood, but we do that through advertising on social media and having folks come out to us. And then we'll do other big days like fall festivals and that type of stuff. But the real knocking on doors, meeting people one-on-one is it's a lot harder today in our area. So, but over the years, we did so many different types of outreaches trying to figure out how can we reach people again, because of the way that I was saved, the burden to find that family, to find those people that were hungry for the Lord, even though they didn't know they were hungry for God. We were always on a quest to find receptive people who were open to the gospel like my family was. And so we tried everything, man. We whether it be door knocking, all of those things. And those things became harder and harder as time went on. And so when we started getting involved with you guys, I'll be honest, at first I was, skeptical, because I thought, well, we're going to get involved in marketing instead of being out on the streets, and for a guy like me with my background, that's a little bit of a shift in terms of the evangelistic approach.
Yeah.
I was thinking of it just in terms of marketing. I thought, well, yeah, we need to do marketing, but I had no idea the strength that it would bring into the church in terms of just reaching families.
Yeah. So talk about that. What's been the experience like with you guys getting connected with people online now through ChurchCandy?
Yeah. So for us, it's been incredible. And again, I say that because of our background in outreach, because we tried so many different ways of reaching people and events. So many events. We tried to have so many. We had so many Easter events, for example, Christmas events. Anytime there was a holiday or a big day, we would try to take advantage of it by having some sort of an illustrated sermon or some sort of a way of people inviting friends days, and all of those types of things. And because we did that, we were able to measure that up against the ChurchCandy marketing process. So we knew how many people would come in on a big day. We might have 2,000 people show up on campus for Fall Festival, for example, one year. And out of those 2,000 people, we knew we only had about 5 families that came to church the following day on Sunday. We'd have it on a Saturday and invite everybody to church on Sunday. And we just have a handful of people. And we had experienced that over and over and over again. So then all of a sudden, when we began working with you guys and launching our ChurchCandy efforts, I think the first couple of weeks, was a little slow. We had maybe, one family came or 2 families would come. But then we started having, I would send out 7 videos. So we would get, let's say 10 responses to our marketing campaign. And I would send out 10 videos, let's say, just saying, hey, thanks for planning a visit with us. This is Pastor Bob. Look forward to meeting you, or something like that. Simple video. And then we'd have 2 or 3 out of the 7 or 2 or 3 out of the 10 that would actually come. And so I was like, wow, that's an incredible ratio compared to the ratios that we had received with the outreaches that we did. So, man, we just doubled down. I thought, if we can get this much response, so then I began to view it differently. I began to view it more as an evangelistic arm. And so I took advantage of that with my little videos, reaching out to people. Anybody who would plan a visit, I would take it as a chance for me to be a pastor to the community, to people that didn't know me.
Yeah.
And I try to take it to the next level. So yeah, we just started to see more response. And so over the course of a year, we've seen more response in our marketing and Church Candy, marketing than I think we ever saw in 10 years of boots on the ground outreach. And, yeah, it's incredible, really incredible.
So cool to see God do that. So to break it down, Church Candy will help you, we'll run ads inviting people in the community to church. And there's a call to action on the ads that says, hey, click here to plan your visit. And so if people are interested, they've got a receptive heart, they'll go through that form, fill it out, you get notified. And what you're doing from there is connecting with them, sending them a personal video where it's like, hey, this is Pastor Bob. Hey, Julie, like you're saying their name. They know that you're taking the time to personally connect with them. And then you're seeing a large percentage of them, 30 to 50% possibly, it sounds like, actually show up in person. How does that differ compared to a lot of the boots on the ground ministry that you guys would do?
Yeah. Like I said, and again, I can speak to it because we tried so many different avenues. When we were running buses all over town. So at one point we had 3 buses running to different areas of our city. When we were doing that, we were seeing some response. Obviously people would get on the bus and come to church. So we were seeing our numbers go up when we did that. But what we weren't seeing when we were doing that was the people that would actually assimilate into the church. They would come because we were doing different things to try to draw them in, but actually getting people assimilated into the church. So if we want to talk about how many people were actually assimilated all over 10 years of bus ministry and block parties and door knocking outreach, the number was very, very small, maybe 1% of all of the people that we reached out to. I think we have one lady in our family still left over from all of the bus ministry that we did post-COVID, let's say.
It's huge.
Yeah, so one person that stayed after 10 years of boots on the ground ministry. But today, there's such an interesting, and you said something very interesting, which is really what it is. It's the receptivity. What we're realizing is that there's a lot of receptive people out there like me and my family. We were receptive to the gospel. We just had never heard the gospel. So what we've always been after is receptivity. Who in our city is receptive? And we tried to do that through the different outreaches. But for some reason, what we're finding out is that people are more receptive to investigate the church online through our marketing. They get a chance to really investigate the church. And the receptive people, by the time they respond to our marketing and by the time they plan their visit and come, they're really ready to come. And they want, they're here because they want to be here. And so then when we apply a little bit of effort just to welcome them and let them know, hey, we're looking forward to meeting you, and we set up the church so that, it's set up for people who are coming to visit, not just for our church family. I'll tell you what, probably I would say right now we're averaging about 2 or 3 out of the 7 to 10 that we send videos out to. So if I send 7 videos out, and my videos are saying, it's after they've responded to the plan to visit marketing. And I just say, like I said earlier, this is Pastor Bob, looking forward to meeting you, John, tomorrow. If you come, please introduce yourself to me. And I would say 2 to 3 families out of 7 are coming. And now, after a year that we've been doing this, we have these families assimilating into the church, joining small groups. We had two families last month who were baptized together as families, now in small groups. One of them in my membership class. So, if I had to compare, how many families actually did that when we were doing the boots on the ground style outreach to today, there's really no comparison. And I think part of it is because by the time someone responds to the ads and they respond to my video and they actually show up, it's almost like they've decided we're going to church and we're ready to go to church.
Yeah.
So now if our church family is open and excited and ready, and we got signs out front saying, before they even get in the church, if you plan to visit, come this way, So we're doing everything we can to help them over that bridge of saying, okay, this is my church. Man, there's no comparison. There really is just no comparison. That's why I'm so excited about it. Because again, for a guy like me, who always, began my ministry believing, man, I'm going to be the guy out on the street every week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wanted to be that kind of a pastor because that's the way I was born. That's the way I was led to Christ. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to be one of these guys sitting in the office. I'm out on the streets. So it's such a paradigm shift for me, in other words.
Yeah.
But so now what I'm doing is I'm viewing my videos each week as my being out on the street, so to speak. I'm trying to pastor these people before they ever come to church.
It's huge.
It's incredible.
I love that, man. I love that.
Yeah.
In Luke, Jesus gives the parable of the great banquet.
Yeah.
Right. And the master tells the servants, go out to the highways and the byways so that my house will be full.
Right.
And 2025, man, this is the highways and the byways. It's right here.
It's right there.
It's where people are. And so it's so cool to see that. I know you've spent a lot of time studying and you've done like dissertation on church growth and things like that. Share a little bit about that, about like kind of what you found and then maybe comparisons to what you guys are doing now through digital means.
So my dissertation was related to evangelism. Why the American church is declining. Why are we not able to reach people in America? So it's so interesting. When I was going through my dissertation, and it was basically at the same time that we started this process. And so sort of merging the two thoughts together, and how can this be an evangelistic tool for us, not just a marketing tool? And what I realized in my dissertation journey is that, the Bible says that the Son of Man, this was sort of the premise and the guiding scripture of my dissertation, that Christ came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. And what I learned in my journey, in my studies, was to the extent that the churches have that posture of servanthood for the community, the church always grows and the church always breaks through and begins to be an influence in the community. To the extent that the church no longer has that servanthood attitude towards the people in their community, then the church becomes insulated and, begins to decline over time. So that pattern you see throughout church history. And so what is interesting about that, how it relates to ChurchCandy, is that, we begin to look at it like a different form of servanthood. Early on, servanthood to us was more of, again, the boots on the ground type thing. Let's go out and serve people. But people are less receptive to that in many ways, and in many communities are less receptive to that. Some communities, a lot of that type of work can still really be effective. But a lot of communities in America, people don't want your service. They don't need what you're offering, so to speak, in many ways.
I turn away the solar salesmen and the people that come to knock on my door. Yeah.
It's just. So what we realized was that now we can serve people online in a different way, and we can still view that as servanthood evangelism. We can still view that. One of the ways we do that is, when we'll post little videos. Now I realize that I can be pastoral online so much easier. So we're sending out little small videos saying, listen, we're praying for you. The City Chapel is a place here in Arlington. We did a video the other day of me just standing next to I-20 with all the traffic going by our church every day.
Yeah.
And I just said, listen, everybody, we're here praying for you. Right here, you see us on the freeway. We're praying for our community. We're praying for peace in our neighborhood, peace in the city. And if you need prayer, we're here for you. And so in a real sense, that's serving our community in a much more effective way. And so, a lot of things that I learned in my dissertation journey and studying that whole process of how can churches build a bridge between the church and the community. Nowadays, that bridge can be built so effectively if you can slowly but surely begin to generate an audience in your community, by just being there every day. I still go to Starbucks and try to meet everybody I can in the community. I think all of that is very important, and it helps to a degree. But one of the things I learned in the dissertation journey also is that nowadays it takes longer to make a disciple. It takes more time. It takes more willingness to spend time with people, and really get to know them instead of just, you may not be able to just preach the gospel day one. You'll have to build a relationship with them. And again, that's something that we've been able to do online much easier. So,
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it takes longer in that discipleship process?
well, I think there's a few reasons. One of them is the skepticism against the church. People are more skeptical of the church. Another thing is that people are jaded in many ways against the church or against the message. Nowadays, another reason is that people are also inundated with a lot of other ideas and a lot of other philosophies, a lot of information online. So that's one of the things we deal with in the pastoral ministry. And that's one of the reasons why education for me was so important, was because all of the different philosophies and ideologies that my people were being introduced to, or in particular the younger people, on the internet. And I think that's making people outside of the church more distant, more skeptical, and it causes a greater chasm and barrier. So the pastors and leaders and church people have to be willing to spend a little bit more time with people and just be authentic and be a friend. And so that's another thing I really love about this, is that I've been able to become a friend to people before they really even show up. I'll reach out to somebody that is planning a visit, or in that flywheel, as we're calling it now, where they're maybe they planned to visit but they didn't show up. We'll reach out to them. Hey, we missed you. We missed seeing you. We know life happens. And then I'll send them a message and say, hey, listen, what can I pray with you about? What's going on in your world? And let us know. And so now we're being able to build that relationship with people that we know is necessary now to win someone to Christ. It just takes longer. It's just more challenging for many, many people.
Yeah. You told me before about how you would try and go do covert evangelism by like getting involved in the community, or like going to the gym.
Sure.
What were your results like trying that?
Well,
Not trying the gym. I mean, like,
no, actually, that's a good question, because that's really where you see how much time it takes. So let's say, for example, I was attending a certain gym for 9 years, one gym in particular. And I probably, because I'm a pastor, I tried to just make friends. And so I just made friends with guys for 2 years before they knew what I did. So that's 2 years of time invested in these guys. And I knew that I was there to break into my community, break into a different group of people, and eventually evangelize. But I realized when I got in the process that it was going to take a while, and that these guys were not receptive or open to any gospel message at that particular moment. And, so I think it was 2.5 years before one guy finally asked me, well, what do you do? What exactly do you do for a living? And that's when the news broke out that I was a pastor. And the guys in the gym were like, what? You're a pastor? Yeah. So, and then in those 9 years at that gym, I had one guy that came to church. So, again, that speaks to the time and again, that's why I'm so excited about what we're experiencing now. Because when you think about 9 years for one person to come and visit, and all of a sudden now we're having 2 and 3 families come every week. It's just really, we keep saying it over and over again, but it's very interesting to me just because of all the different things I've been involved in. So yeah, I think I had one guy in those 9 years. I've been out of that gym for 4 or 5 years.
well, you couldn't tell. I couldn't tell if you asked me.
Oh, that's my black shirt. That's my black shirt. Yeah. I have one guy now in our church that's been coming, that's from that gym, but I haven't been there in a while. So, but he remembered me. So,
Yeah. Well, that's really cool, man. So
Yeah.
you guys are getting some new guests coming. What type of people are you guys connecting with? I hear a lot of criticisms. Go look on the Instagram comments whenever I post about Church Candy,
Yeah.
and people bring up transfer growth and things like that. So are you guys seeing a lot of that? What does it look like?
so what we're seeing, and I can speak to a few different families that have come to church. First of all, we're seeing people coming who have Catholic background.
Interesting.
So this is Arlington. So Arlington is a very diverse, one of the most diverse communities in America. Okay, not just Texas. So we're getting a lot of families that are coming from a Catholic background. We're getting a lot of biracial couples, which is again a good representation of what's in Arlington, which is very awesome for us. And we're getting here's the other group of or type of families that we're seeing that we hadn't really thought of. Because I was wondering, are we going to see a lot of transfer growth? Because there's other churches in our community that are doing similar things, but we're seeing a big number of couples, young couples, that are showing up, and they're showing up to church. They had a church background when they were young, dropped out of church like many people do. Now they're wanting, because they're having children, they want to come to church.
Yeah.
But again, that age demographic is going to investigate the church online first. So it's not transfer growth. It's people who were dropouts or people who dropped out of the Catholic Church, and got involved in whatever they were involved in their life. But now that they're starting their family, they want their children to be raised in church. And so when you're a church that's reaching out in that way and making yourself available and accessible, man, they're ready. They're ready to come. So I don't think that we've had anyone in the course of 1 year so far that is a transfer person.
That's nice, man.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Then take that. I get in like I try to not get in arguments, but people
Yeah.
will complain. They'll find anything to complain about. So with that, you guys have new families come. I love that you're hey, if you plan a visit, come here.
Sure.
What are you doing to assimilate them, to get them bought in and coming back again next Sunday?
So in that sense, I have to give some props to my daughter-in-law, my son, and my other son, and these guys who are really involved in that process, because what they're doing is following up, doing a really good job following up. So we do two main things. One, we have a welcome team. So we have signage out. We have a welcome team that's specifically designed for ChurchCandy visitors, people who plan to visit and they actually showed up. After that, our little team will look at the people who didn't show up and try to have and do some follow-up email efforts for that. Now we're starting to get into where we are, also sending a little video in that regard as well. So just being really intentional when they come, that's been really important for us. Because we saw the value of everything early on, we just rearranged everything in the foyer as if we're expecting all of the visitors to show up. So all of our gifts are ready, signage is ready, greeters are ready at the door. Yeah. So that's a big deal. That helps a lot. So when a family actually shows up, they realize, okay, these guys are ready for me. And even on my videos that I send out, I'll say, hey, when you come to the foyer, there'll be somebody to greet you. And if you have any questions about where do you go or what the church is all about, they'll answer those questions. So I think intentionality is important. If we miss them and they don't show up, it's not a deal where we'll reach back out to them, not in a condemning way, but in hey, we missed you, man. Because our feeling is if they actually planned to visit, if they took that step,
there was a reason.
There's a reason. Yeah. And maybe something happened, life happens. And we all know that when a family that is coming out of the world or something like that, when they take a step towards God, the enemy takes a step towards them. We recognize that. And so we'll try to reach back out to them and say, hey, we look forward to seeing you soon. We're here for you. Yeah. So yeah, it's been incredible. And again, we're just now starting to get that. The folks that planned to visit 2 or 3 weeks ago that didn't make it, finally they're showing up. And the way I knew that is someone will come and I'll introduce myself to them in the sanctuary and I'll say, tell me how you heard about us. And they'll say, well, we saw you online. And I thought, well, you mean like last night I sent you a video? Like, no, you sent this video 4 weeks ago.
Wow.
This is just the first chance we had to come. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. I love that you guys are seeing that. Do you know about what your church size on average was when you guys first started with us versus now?
So yeah, we started when we started the process, and let me try to do the best that I can. You know, pastors like to inflate the numbers a little bit, but I can tell you this, we have grown probably in 1 year's time, I would say from, well, certainly probably 70 people. We've grown in 1 year's time. We've seen 70, our attendance average 70 more people.
It's huge. That's huge. And
Incredible in 1 year. Yeah.
that's awesome.
So again, when you compare that to past efforts of outreach, I mean, there's really no comparison.
Yeah. So you were talking about at the beginning about how you were hesitant about working with not even just Church Candy, but just investing in digital and marketing. What would you say to other pastors that are in that boat right now?
You know, in my age and my generation, when you start talking about marketing your church, it's in some ways there's a little bit of a negative connotation to that in my age bracket because you know, when I started in the ministry and when you had the idea of being an outreach church or an authentic church, the sentiment was we're not ministry mechanics. We're not marketing ministry. We're preaching the gospel.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I get those comments. I'll talk about what we do, and they go, "What happened to preaching the gospel?"
Yeah,
And it's like, well, this doesn't replace that. You still should. Yes, you still do that.
Exactly. And so, in my I guess my age bracket, that it's a paradigm shift a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of guys that are my age that are a lot more, tech savvy, so to speak, than I am for sure. But that was a little bit of a barrier at first. I thought, man, I don't want to turn into a marketing, ministry here. We're trying to figure out how we can reach people and how we can disciple people. And, we want that to be as authentic as it can be. And the notion of doing, a marketing campaign was just really odd to me because I just didn't know, I just was ignorant to the process. So when my kids, who were in that generation, yeah, absolutely, and they're like, no, that's not. You have the wrong idea. This is how people are going to respond to the church more today. And I was skeptical. I thought, first of all, maybe they would respond to you, but they're not going to respond to me, But so anyway, so yeah, it was a little bit of a paradigm shift. But once I realized that I was able to do the ministry that I wanted to do, the outreach that I wanted to do through that means, then everything changed.
Yeah.
I mean, everything shifted for me, and I thought, well, this is the new norm. This is the new way that we're going to reach. And I think also, Brady, I think it's, I can't speak to other communities, but in our community in particular, in Arlington, the demographics in our community, I think it is, the people are much more receptive to this process than when we were knocking on doors or visiting people out on the street. So, in that sense, it was a paradigm shift for me. But once I saw it, once I realized that this is the way that I can minister to more people than ever before, man, it was just incredible, no brainer,
Yeah.
an easy switch.
Well, it's huge, man. I love what God is doing through City Chapel, and I want to take a moment. This is still going to be on the podcast, but what we have found is the best ads don't look like ads. So, like, for example, I'm going to take part of everything you said. We're going to chop it up and we're going to use it to promote Church Candy.
Sure.
But what I want to do now, I want to ask you some questions about City Chapel.
Okay.
And the church in Arlington, and we're going to chop it up and use it for ads for you guys.
Oh, cool.
So like this is going to be going on your social media, and I'll be giving it to Caleb, and he'll throw it on some ads.
Sure.
And so I'm going to ask you some questions about City Chapel in Arlington, and I want you to respond almost like you're inviting people to church, but you're just telling me like what the church is about, and like, hey, if you're lost and you're wanting more in life, So just really speak to that person that you guys are trying to reach. Cool?
Sure.
Makes sense?
Absolutely.
All right. So Pastor Bob, your church in Arlington, City Chapel, tell me about it. Why should people come check it out?
Sure. So City Chapel is 23 years old. It's a church plant. We started with 8 young people, just meeting in our living room for Bible study. And from the early days until today, our focus is on helping people get a little stronger in their relationship with God. So if you're someone who's saying, you know what, I've been in church in the past in my life, or I grew up in church, but I got out of church, or maybe you might say, Pastor Bob, I've never been to church. I don't know anything about following God, but I have a desire to learn. I have a desire to visit a church. City Chapel is a church that you can come into, and we're all about trying to help you walk with God one step at a time, one day at a time. And so that's our focus. We just want to help those people who grew up in church get a little stronger every day and help, break through some of the barriers to your walk with God. And because I wasn't raised in church, I know what it feels like to go to church for the very first time with no church background. I know what it means, and so I can help those of you who say, Pastor, I feel like I'm supposed to go to church now. I want to go to church. I want to get to know God, but I know nothing about it. That's my background. So I know how to help and walk with you through that process. And the church is filled with people that love helping people in that process. And so that's what City Chapel is all about. It's a place in the city that's there to help people get a little closer to God every day.
I love it. I love it. So where do you guys meet and what times?
So we meet right on I-20 between Kelly Elliott and Park Springs, right in the heart of Arlington, off of I-20, 4015 Interstate I-20 in Arlington, Texas, and we meet at 10 o'clock every Sunday morning.
Great. I love it. Tell me, what's something that people love about your church?
Well, one of the things that we hear most about our church is how friendly the people are. And so that's one of the things you'll find out right away is that City Chapel is a church filled with a lot of friendly people. People from all over the city, all over the Metroplex are there, all different types of people. And so you'll meet somebody that's like you, and you'll meet a lot of friendly people who want to make a friend and do life with you. So I think one of the things you'll find about City Chapel that stands out the most is the friendliness of the people and the atmosphere of prayer and worship.
I love it. Well, Pastor Rob, thank you so much for taking time to
Thanks.
come on the ChurchCandy podcast. If there's any pastors or church planters out there that would want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, they can go to citychapelonline.com and just leave me a message there, and I'll be glad to hit them back.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.